Steel Curtain Network.
Por Jorgito! Goes down! Najee Harris! DJ Watt!
What is up, Steeler fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Postgame Show. This is not like the others that we've had so far this season where the Steelers do not win. They lose 27-24, a very strange game in Indianapolis, and the Steelers record drops to 3-1. We're going to break it all down for you. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Bryan Davis and Corey Eckenroth. Before we get started, you won't see Dave Schofield here today. Dave's dealing with some family issues, and I also want to send a big shout out, not just to Dave, but also to Jeremy Betts. In case people don't know, Jeremy Betts lives in Western North Carolina in the Asheville area, which was absolutely hammered by the hurricane that came through. I know that he was kind of displaced for the time being. So before we even talk about football, I wanted to get those thoughts and prayers out to those guys for sure. But let's bring Bryan Davis into the show first. Bryan, how's it going and what's your knee-jerk reaction?
It is great to be here as always. My knee-jerk reaction is one of positivity, but if I'm going to be perfectly honest, everybody wants to talk about the mistakes and the miscues. The defense was not there today.
Yeah. And we welcome Corey Eckenroth filling in. Corey, how's it going?
I appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Just kind of going off what Bryan was said, this game was kind of weird, and there was a lot of penalties involved and a lot of shooting yourself in the foot. And it's just, is this that Tomlin game?
Well, I mean, if you listen to Dave Schofield, and he said it on Thursday's preview, he said it on Pittsburgh Standard Time, his audio-only podcast with Greg Benevent, that there is a week 4 bugaboo with Mike Tomlin. And it's crazy. It actually goes all the way back to, I think, Bill Cowher's time with the Steelers, that for some reason, when the Steelers are 3-0, they never win week 4. And he mentioned how the 2 times that they did were weird bye weeks in between there, between the 3rd and 4th game. So you hate that history continues to repeat itself, yet it continues to repeat itself. So let's talk about this game. And I think that as we continue to go through this, we're going to diagnose a lot of issues with the team based on the stats, but I do want to make sure everyone that might have missed the game or didn't catch all of it, there were some key injuries of note. There are 2 players that both were playing at a high level and both were playing good games when they left. The first injury was an ankle injury to James Daniels. He left the game, hobbled off the field, was carted into the locker room, was seen on crutches and a boot after the game. So that does not look promising for James Daniels. Also, another ankle injury, Cordero Patterson, who is having himself one whale of a game, and he was running the ball extremely well, had 6 carries for 42 yards. It's actually 7 yards a carry. He has an ankle injury. He's not able to return. Nick Herbig goes down with an ankle injury, and he was actually able to come back and finish the game. Will there be repercussions of that? Meaning, will he be sidelined next week? Will he miss practice time? We have yet to know that. But I do want to get that out of the way. Also, Najee Harris did leave the game grimacing at one point. I don't know if it was a shoulder. He had a really long catch and run, punishing finish to it. Maybe he was in a sling this week, so we'll see about the injuries, but I wanted to bring that up. Let's talk about this the way we always do. In case you're new to the program, we break it down offense and defense. We look at the stats. I'm going to get to all these super chats here in a second, but let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Justin Fields, the quarterback play. Of course, it's going to be a burning topic today. Justin Fields finishes. I'm going to talk about his whole body of work here, okay? 22 of 34 for 312 yards. Now, if you adjust the 30 yards from sack yardage is off, he throws for 282. 9.2 average, 1 touchdown, no interceptions for a 104 rating, but he also leads the Steelers in rushing. 10 carries for 55 yards, a 5.5 average, 2 rushing touchdowns with a long of 12. Bryan, we'll start with you. What did you think about Justin Fields in this game?
I'm mixed on the whole Justin Fields thing, but I'm looking, if I had to be 50-50 and I had to make the split, I would probably say that I'm still high on the way that he battled in the second half of this game. Look, I could be making a whole bunch of excuses for him, but I didn't really think that this was a bad passing game for him at all. And this was good numbers for him, but numbers are subjective here. What I'm saying about Justin Fields is the fact that I thought they led them in the second half. I thought he was leading them to a win. And even in the first half with some of those miscues, some of those big miscues, I thought that was more more on the offensive line, more on a lot of things, more on misfortune, more on sloppy play. And Mike Tomlin likes to say sloppy play in the post-game press conference. I think that that he kind of cemented himself as the starter here in the second half, and that's a lot of people are going to think that's crazy talk, but he led the team. But you have some peccadillos with him. You're going to have he's going to lose the ball. And the play that was his worst play was one where he simply tripped.
Yeah.
Where he was trying to reverse field and he tripped. And that happens when
He was down.
trouble. Well, yeah, I'm not talking, but they did make mistakes
Yeah.
Yes.
in this game, and we could talk about the refs all we want, but I don't
Sure.
think the refs took away from this performance. But I thought Justin Fields' performance was admirable
Okay.
and hopeful.
All right, Corey, what were your thoughts on Fields?
I thought that Fields did extremely well with this game. I actually think that Arthur Smith did more to lose this game than Justin Fields did. If
Okay.
you look at the numbers that Justin Fields did, he had 12 missed passes. I mean, normally in a Bears offense, you would expect him to just have terrible numbers, but he did well this game. And the fact that he was able to run the ball when nobody else was able to outside of, Cordero Patterson. I just don't think the game plan offensively was fit for what the Colts were going to do. There was no changes. There was no game planning in the middle to where they were tailoring to do outside throws. They were bringing pressure up the middle all game long. The Steelers just couldn't match intensity this game. That's what it really came down to.
Especially early on. And then when you throw
Yeah.
in James Daniels leaving, and now you have Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick at your right and left guard, respectively, with a rookie center,
Right.
that's trouble. So, hey, kudos to the Colts for that game plan. But just focusing on Fields here for a second, I want to say this. Is he perfect? No. No one's ever suggested that he's perfect. I have to think that he's the best quarterback for this offense, though, right now, because he's mobile and he can run. And yes, he took a bad sack, and Bryan alluded to that when he got tripped up when he was trying to make a play. And I think that pretty much that's kind of been coached out of his game up until this game. Could you imagine, though, if Russell Wilson is even remotely hampered from a mobility perspective, what he would look like with this offensive line? He would be a sitting duck. There's no way they'd be able to move the football.
Yeah.
And so while Justin Fields does have his warts, I think he's taken some big steps. I don't know if they even make this a game without Justin Fields at quarterback, meaning I don't know if the offense is able to kind of revive itself to have a second half comeback. And that's not to say that this Pittsburgh Steelers team should be lauded for coming back. But this offense proved a little bit to me. I mean, I think that let's assume, and this might be a hasty assumption, that Isaac Seumalo comes back next week. Okay, so maybe Mason McCormick slides over to the right side. I like that setup better than Spencer Anderson. At the same time, that's assuming just Daniels is out. I just don't think that this loss was on the shoulders of Justin Fields. We'll put it that way. I thought he played well enough to lead the team to victory. He didn't get a lot of help from an offensive line perspective. He also didn't get a lot of help from a receiving perspective. George Pickens had, I think, he had a horrible game. There's an end zone drop, the fumble. I mean, just really, really crazy stuff. It'll be interesting to see. What's up?
We only lost by 3 points.
Oh, but it's, yeah, I get it. But
I mean, this game was winnable, and you're exactly right in what you're saying about Justin Fields. Like, he did nothing to lose this game. He did everything to win this game. So it was everything else that just needed to get cleaned up in this game, and it just all fell apart.
Well, and a lot of people in the live chat are asking who was to blame for the botched snap. And all you can say is, okay, you watch the replay. Fields is not expecting the snap. Yes, McCormick goes over and taps Frazier's leg, but Frazier had already snapped the ball by the time he did that. It was strange. Frazier wasn't sure what happened in the postgame when he was interviewed by Chris Adamski at his locker. So we'll have to wait and see. It's got to get cleaned up, though. It's a rookie center. You're going to have those issues. But Bryan, anything to add about Fields before we move on?
No, you are absolutely correct when you say that they did not lose because of Justin Fields, and they did not they would not have been back in that game without him. The escapability and just the what Russell Wilson would have done in there with the patchwork up front in front of him, this would have been truly ugly. You have a chance every time with Justin Fields. And I was trying to tell the people that I was watching the game with, my pessimistic buddy that I always talk about. He was like, "Oh, there's no way they can come back. This game's over when it's 14-0. I'm like, they're fine. In the fourth quarter, when they're down by 10, I'm like, they're actually fine, because I actually believe in what this offense can do, especially in the last 6 minutes of the game. And we saw what happened, but it all fell apart because of a botch.
Think about the adjustment that is, though, Brian. Like, think about last year and year prior, and actually, hell, go all the way back to Ben Roethlisberger's last year. If they're down 2 scores with 6 minutes left, are we even thinking that there's a chance they come back?
Never.
I want to talk about the fact that, like, we were down 17 points and Justin Fields gave us a chance to win at the very end of the game. I mean, how just that fact alone, when you think about where he was last year as a quarterback for the Bears, coming here and just what we were expecting from Russell Wilson to be the starter, and he's the backup, and now he's here at 3-1 and almost winning this game. And where Justin Fields is now is just light years ahead of where he was before.
I agree with that. All right, let's switch gears now. Let's go to the running game. As mentioned, that Justin Fields led the Steelers with 55 yards on 10 carries. Cordero Patterson was second, 6 for 43. Najee Harris had 13 carries, led the team in carries for 19 yards, a 1.5 yard average. And then Aaron Shamklin, I'm sorry.
You got it.
Sure. One carry for 5 yards, and that was his long. The Steelers rushed in total 30 carries for 122 yards, averaging 4.1, but that's not even close to that if you take away Fields' scrambling ability and design runs and Cordero Patterson's contributions. I feel like the conversation here is on the offensive line and what is going on with Najee Harris. I'm going to let Corey start off with this one. Go ahead, Corey. What do you think?
I feel like you're putting me on the spot because of what I actually had for my game prediction. You know, I said that Najee was going to go for 150
You said
yards.
150. I saw that.
Oh boy, this is just terrible. Anyway, so nothing came together. You know, I actually I'm going to defer all of this to the fact that Steichen and the way that he jumped out to the Colts and got them the lead that they did. It completely changed the game plan that the Steelers were able to do. You know. But however, there should have not been a point where they abandoned the run, and Najee should have been able to start to develop the run. But it was Cordero Patterson that was able to get all the yards in this. What is going on with Najee Harris? You know, this is a team that was supposed to be terrible against the run, and they just stymied the Steelers all game long with Najee. You know, it just seemed like with Najee and the power run game, it wasn't working nearly as well as it was with Cordero Patterson and the speed game of it. And once the Steelers started to adjust their run game to that and started to run their offense and the speed option, it seemed to have a lot more effectiveness.
Yeah. Brian, what's your take on the running game?
Well, I really thought the run designs were odd to me, throughout, especially in the first half. Najee never really got going. Najee did not seem to have that chip today, where it's almost like he expected to run well. I don't know what it was. He just didn't have that second gear where he just he was plowing through. I'm going to say I don't think there were a whole lot of holes, because that patchwork offensive line right now is killing everything. And when you lose James Daniels, you lose even more. Spencer Anderson was subpar at best, and that's why Mason McCormick got his first start. And then when you have less than 2 years experience on that entire your left tackle is what, 4 or 5 years, then everybody else past your left tackle 2 years at best. And remember, Spencer Anderson didn't play a lot last year. And then so Broderick Jones is the graybeard of that offensive line if you take away Dan Moore Jr. So I just didn't like the running game at all. I like what Cordero Patterson was doing. I thought that I actually think this is a different game if Cordero Patterson stays in and stays healthy.
Well, that's something I wanted to bring up is, everyone looks at the numbers and they say, well, there were no holes. So this is a good question, Brian. So tomorrow I'll plug your audio only show with Coach KT Smith, the Here We Go, the Steelers show. I want you to ask Coach Kevin Smith, how can you explain how Najee Harris has a 1.5 yard average and yet Patterson with only 6 carries is gashing the Colts? What the hell's going on between the offensive line, the schematics, and tell me the difference in the run game with one guy compared to the other? Is it purely play calling? I know they like to try the stretch scheme. They like the pitch with Najee, and it never works, whether it's the offensive line not being able to get out and get to the second level. For whatever reason, it never works. But this wasn't a game where everything was stymied. Cordero Patterson was making plays, and he was making plays in the interior of that offensive line. They were opening holes for him. I'm not about to suggest this is something crazy exotic, but my gosh, it does raise a question of maybe it's Najee's health, also the offensive line, the offensive scheme when they're running the ball. I don't know, but I'll tell you this, Justin Fields should not be leading the team in rushing. I'll put it that way. That's a big issue. Brian, go ahead. What are you going to say? You're muted, Brian.
Sorry about that. What I really wanted to mention too was when I started talking about the scheme, I don't know why you try to run Najee Harris outside at all. It never works. And they seem to have been doing that a lot in at least the first quarter. I don't know how many times they did it. I haven't seen a run chart on it, but that seemed very odd to me. That's not Najee's game. And I feel like the Colts game plan for Najee going up the middle and not as much Patterson. And it's really weird to say that, well, why would one, I see what you're saying, Jeff, why would one have success and the others not? But there's something in Najee's game that Najee was keyed on, but you still cannot try to run a sweep with this guy.
No, he's not that type of player. A lot of people are asking in the live chat, how injured is Jaylen Warren? He missed this game with a knee injury. Well, I can tell you that he didn't go on IR. So that's at least a positive sign, because if he would have been placed on injured reserve, he has to miss 4 games, not 4 weeks, 4 games. They did not put him on injured reserve. I'm not about to say that he'll be back next week, but you never know. No one knows what the injury is. Haven't seen anything about that. So yeah, Warren not being in this game was big. Also, don't think that Jaylen Warren's impact isn't just running the ball. His pass protection is top notch. He is probably one of the best running back, picking up the blitz type backs in the league. And you could see on multiple occasions where the running back was making the wrong decision in terms of pass protection. So that's definitely where he was felt as well. All right, let's move over to the pass catchers now. Pittsburgh Steelers receiving, they have 312 yards receiving on 22 total receptions, a 14.2 average. George Pickens, I already mentioned, now I didn't think he had a great game. He did have 7 catches for 113 yards, a 16.1 average, a long of 38 on 11 targets. Pat Freiermuth, 5 catches, 57 yards, 1 touchdown on 7 targets. Najee Harris, 3 for 54 on 6 targets. Darnell Washington, welcome to the multiple catch club. He has 2 catches for 31 yards on 2 targets. Van Jefferson, 2 catches, 3 targets for 21 yards. Cordero Patterson, 2 catches for 19 yards. And Calvin Austin, 1 catch for 17 yards. A lot of different players caught passes today. Brian, we'll start with you. What did you think about the pass catchers?
I think this is an all 22 question because, and something I need to look at. Do I look at it a lot? No, but I'd like to see who was open, because there was a lot of times you hear all the time, Fields cannot take that sack. The problem is he's trying to get out of the way, but when nobody's open, you don't want to force it in as well. I know you've got to try to throw it away, and I get that. I just felt that there was nothing extremely open downfield with the wide receivers, and that's getting separation. George Pickens, had a really good game, but those 2 glaring mistakes kill it. Now, one thing I will actually try to defend George Pickens on is going to be the fumble more than the I'm going to kill him for the drop pass in the end zone. That was egregious. That was no way should have he dropped that ball. But the fumble was weird to me because I didn't understand with Kleekman's crew, who was calling everything in this game, whether it was a penalty or not. I didn't understand why they didn't call for, like, it wasn't exactly a horse collar, but grabbed him around the neck. And that's something you cannot do. So I thought the fumble was an extra effort thing a little more. And I thought the drop in the end zone was worse, but the fumble hurts more.
Yeah. All right, Corey, what's your thoughts on the pass catchers there?
There were a lot of missed opportunities. I mean, with what Bryan was saying, George Pickens' fumble in the 4-yard line. If you can get in the end zone, that's the difference in this game.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that they acquitted themselves well. There were Mount Washington hurtling over a defender. That was awesome to see. But I think we missed Jalen Warren this game more than we realize. I think the Steelers not being able to execute any kind of outside line of scrimmage screen game where they're able to stretch the ball wide and then move. The Indianapolis was great at being able to push pressure up the middle all the game long, and it really disrupted what the Steelers were going to do. And the Steelers never really responded in terms of their changing their game plan around. They should have had some more screens. They should have had some other types of plays that were able to mitigate the pressure that they were bringing in. It just never happened. And because they didn't have a pass catcher like Jalen Warren, who has the quick twitch ability to get outside and make, the plays where Najee Harris obviously wouldn't be able to at his size. I think that was a big difference in this game, the speed versus the power.
Yeah. I did see some positives in the passing game today. Well, this will tie in with Justin Fields as well as with the pass catchers, just in the sheer number of players that caught passes, also where they caught those passes. So there were passes over the middle to Pat Freiermuth. It was good to see Van Jefferson getting in the mix. Calvin Austin had a catch. Darnell Washington with 2 catches. I mean, when they're really being aggressive, blitzing the middle, that's when your tight ends have to come up big. And while it's still not where we want it to be and where we think it should be, I think it was at least a step in the right direction. Already brought up Pickens. I thought Bryan did a good job talking about the fumble. Just don't carry the ball like a loaf of bread. My middle school coach used to say to that, just don't carry the ball like a loaf of bread. So tuck the damn thing away. And then ultimately, the drop in the end zone, didn't they turn that into, it wasn't that Freiermuth's touchdown? They scored on that same drive, I think.
I think they did.
I think that was it.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's finish this up with both let's talk about the offensive line. I thought the offensive line had a rough game. Injuries aside, pass protection was not ideal. Justin Fields was sacked 4 times for 30 yards. The Indianapolis defense was credited with 9 quarterback hits, and like one of the quarterback hits doesn't count because like he got that roughing the passer call. I think he had 2 actually on him. So those don't even count in terms of statistics. But Bryan, what did you think about the offensive line?
Horrible. I can't go ahead and say, hey, there were a lot of things that you didn't see, that you didn't hear Dan Moore Jr.'s name called. I say that a lot. I thought Dan Moore Jr. had a subpar game as well. I don't really think he had a good game. I thought there was a play early on where they had the sack, like you just mentioned, that ended up not being a sack because it was a roughing the passer call. If I'm a Colts fan, I'm like, where the hell is that coming from? Because if that happened on the Steelers, I'd be pissed, because I did not think that was I really didn't think that was that egregious. But of course I'm taking it. Right. But Broderick Jones, it seemed like Broderick Jones helped let that happen. If you want to go ahead and look at the offensive line today, just compare them to the other offensive line that was on that field today that just made TJ Watt look like he wasn't even in the game at times. Yeah. So there was no chipping. There was nothing. They were just, that offensive line was outclassed today. They're young. They're inexperienced. They have guys that Spencer Anderson did not expect to be a part of this game plan. And he was actually removed from the game plan because they were giving Mason McCormick the start. Mason McCormick, I thought, probably had a really good first start. So that's something that I'm saying that, that's a bright spot there. But Broderick Jones continues he looked better last week. He looked lost this week. So, as far as I'm concerned, we don't grade anymore, but the grade would be poor if I'm talking about the offensive line. Can't give them a pass on this one.
No. Corey, thoughts on the O-line?
I mean, when you're down to your OG3 and OG4 as your starters, how effective can you expect to be? Exactly what Bryan was saying. When you're down to McCormick and Spencer Anderson when you're expecting, Isaac Samalu and James Daniels as your starters, like what do you really expect to have as your offensive line? And it showed today. There's going to be some growing pains, especially because you have a rookie center with Zach Frazier, who is still trying to acquit himself and who's doing well. Considering this position he's in. But, there's only so many injuries that this offensive line is going to be able to take before it starts to crumble. And let's just hope that they can continue to hang on long enough to get some reinforcements.
Yeah, you could tell that both Dan Moore and especially Broderick Jones always felt like he had to help on the inside because of the guard situation, and then oftentimes was getting beat on the outside.
Right.
So it is what it is. All right, we have a lot of super chats here, and I hate to wait for some of these, but we always we don't want to interrupt our segment. So here we go. Let's get Justin Gall gives us $9.99. Thank you for the tip. He said, knee jerk. This game solidifies Fields as a starter despite the loss. Colts wanted this game more than the Steelers. No reason to panic. Fair enough, Justin. I think you're not alone when you think that Justin Fields might have solidified his spot as a Steelers starter, but we shall see. Let's go to Tyler W. He gives us $5. That was not a normal Mike Tomlin Steelers game. Usually they make a play to win close games, not multiple plays to lose them. Where were Watt and Minka? Bryan mentioned that TJ Watt was he didn't make a play. For once, he didn't make that play. And Minka Fitzpatrick, sometimes I feel like these defensive backs are getting neutered by the rules in the game, and he gets flagged for that personal foul. We'll talk about that when we get to the defense. That's good. Wilson Pava gives us $4.99. He said that this rests on us having a rookie center. The defense was bound to have a bad game sooner or later. The offense showed up more often than not, and that's a big plus. Thank you, Wilson. Appreciate the tip there. Let's go to Nicholas Gabriel gives us $5. I don't know whose fault it is, but these botch snaps every week need to get cleaned up. Despite the loss, there were some inspiring things I saw from Fields. That's fair enough. I think we're all kind of sick and tired of the botched QB center exchanges. Let's go to Steel Dog 88 gives us $5. That the offensive line was terrible. Defensive line was terrible early on. To be honest, the difference was too many mistakes and turnovers. I think that's an accurate assessment, Steel Dog 88. Here we go to John Anna, gives us $9.99. He said the middle of the defense was wide open today. I think the All-22 is going to show a combo of poor schemes, breakdowns in communication, and unfortunately an effort problem today too. I think it's also going to show that Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson cannot be your every down inside linebackers.
Peyton Wilson got abused today. Yes. That fourth combination between Josh Downs and him getting covered by they just abused him all game long. That was the difference in this game.
He's fast, but he's not that. And that's where you miss someone like a Cam Sutton for sure.
Right.
All right, let's go to Squint Eastwood. Gives us $5. Said much respect for Justin. After that hit he took at the goal line, the offensive line was the biggest disappointment. He took several big shots in this game. Let's get another tip from John Anna. It gives us $4.99. Said Fields played well, but he needs to learn to adjust pass protection or throw a hot route. I think there's a lot of progressions here. As long as I would say that he took a step forward in this game. I don't know. Some might disagree, but let's hope those continue. Let's go to Cass. Gives us $4.99. If anything, I still think Justin Fields gives us the best chance to win or come back and is solidifying his role as the future.
Can I ask a question real quick? Like, is there
sure.
anybody that thinks that if Russell Wilson is healthy, he's going to walk into this role right now?
I don't know.
I don't. That's a good question. I really, at this point, there are some people calling for Wilson, which in this game, and I'm like, they're not bringing Wilson in this game. They
kept showing the cameras on during the game, and I'm like, what are they even showing him for? Like, even if he was healthy, I would still want Fields as my starter right now. He's proven himself worthy to actually continue.
But most of the live chat is actually supporting Fields, which I expected to see something a little different coming in, especially after the first loss of the season. But they're recognizing what Justin Fields can do. And I think I really think that this was a little bit of a, I don't want to say a feather in the cap, but a little bit of an example of what fans are believing that Justin Fields can do, and they're feeling more comfortable with him. So to answer Corey's question, I don't think so. I don't think that you're going to see some Russell Wilson this season. It's inevitable, but they're not going to completely waste his tenure here. But our source told us way back in April, they want Justin Fields to be the future. And in the second half of 2024, you're probably going to see a good bit of him. Now you're seeing him early.
And
If Justin Fields gets hot at all, we may not see Russell Wilson this year.
barring injury.
Injury.
I would agree with that. But hey, that's a discussion for another time. I want to bring up something that Afton Forhead, who we have a super chat here from her, I want to get to. She said that this first half of this game reminded her of week 4 last year against Houston. The difference was, again, that when the defense didn't have their A game, there was no offense that was at least winning the time of possession battle, because believe it or not, the Steelers did that in this game. They actually won the time of possession battle, I think 31 minutes to something like 28. So they were still able to get drives. They were still able to get points. They were still able to claw their way back, even with the miscues and mistakes. That's the difference between this year and last year. But let's get these other super chats here. Dave Dixon gives us $5, said, "What's up, guys? Fields is QB1, in my opinion. The defense stunk. Elliott is an unsung hero on defense. Thanks for the content. Also, officiating continues to be inconsistent."
Everything correct.
I've said it a million times, Dave. If the NFL is not doing a thing about it, they don't care about it, because if they're trying to fix it, they're failing miserably. Let's go to Steelers Nation Australia. Our buddy Marky D, the Dingo Dollars, gives us 10 of them. He said, "The Colts are who we thought they were. That's why we took the damn field. If you want to crown them, then crown their asses. But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook." Hey, Denny Green, rest in peace.
Love that guy.
That quote is almost 20 years old. That's an 18-year-old quote already, and I
remember the night it happened. I remember the night it happened.
Against
I
the
remember
Bears.
exactly where I was sitting when it happened.
All right, Faceless Man gives us $9.99, says defense failed to adjust early. Tomlin needs to take accountability for the slow starts. Arthur Smith called a good game, and Edmonds is no longer a starter. On to Dallas. Yeah, Edmonds was on the field some. I don't even know what number he is. I got to be honest, because he's not 34.
Yeah, this is Jalen Elliott.
And I don't know. No, Jalen Elliott. Yeah, you're right. I thought you said Deshaun.
Jalen Elliott, I thought it was 20. Deshaun Elliott's 25.
Yeah, Jalen's 34.
Yeah, you're right, Brian. I don't know what number he is.
I'm just going to shut
up. All right, let's go to Dennis Pavlik. He gives us $5. Says Wilson would get killed behind this offensive line right now. Be honest, people. That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, when you start to backup guards, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And the last one, Afton Ford gives us $2. How much of this loss is on the coordinators? Well, Afton, we are going to answer that question first after we take this break. So stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break from our sponsors. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, and honestly, I wanted to touch on this at some point, and I figured why not start the second half, since Afton was kind enough to give us a tip for it. The coordinators, offense and defense. I know Corey alluded to this already with the Arthur Smith, but Brian, I'll start with you. What did you think about the play calling?
I didn't like the run play calling. I didn't like it at all, especially with some of those outside runs with Najee Harris. I just didn't think it worked. The one thing, if we can go back, and one thing that makes me wonder is, why are there so many plays in the flat when it looks like that Justin Fields is looking to go downfield? Is that a Justin Fields thing, or is that an Arthur Smith thing? It seems more like that's a quarterback decision to go ahead and make that. So if I have anything that I want to go ahead and improve with Justin Fields, it's probably, maybe take some shots. But were they calling the shots? I thought the play calling was a little bit weird, not horrible on the offensive side of the ball, but a little bit weird. And look, you see what you have with Mount Washington. Start making more plans for this guy.
Yes.
Go ahead, Corey. What were your thoughts on the play calling and on both sides of the ball?
Well, with like I alluded to earlier, I think that there was a lack of recognition from Arthur Smith to kind of change the game plan up and go to a boundary type situation where you were able to get the ball away from the center of the field where they were attacking the most. You know, I think that in the fact that they were slow to that just kind of that was why it took so long for them to get back in the game and ultimately why they weren't able to win it. On the defensive side of the ball, I think it was just a lack of execution. You know, they were just gashing the Steelers all game long in the run game. They didn't really need to push the ball down the field. So I don't even know if it would have made a difference if Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco was back there at that point. But because Joe Flacco was back there and he has the experience against the Steelers, he has the pocket presence to be able to push the ball down the field. It made him more dangerous to play against than Anthony Richardson. So when Richardson went out of the game, it almost seemed like the Colts were actually going to be more dangerous at that point to the Steelers. But it wouldn't have mattered. The Steelers just they weren't able to stymie the run game and put them in long situations to let the defense feast. I mean, where was TJ Watt this game? You know, it was the one time I think all season we could actually say that. So credit to the Colts defense for being able to negate, you know, TJ Watt, because nobody else has been able to figure that out.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
I didn't mention the defensive coordinators, and I one thing that I felt that was very disconcerting was in the post-game press conference when Mike Tomlin alluded to the fact that they game plan for Richardson and not Flacco. And I always have a problem with that because maybe they need to look at the fact that there could be a backup quarterback coming in. When Corey kind of mentioned it, I was thinking that when Flacco came in, I worried more because there's always that big mistake potential with Anthony Richardson. There's that big play potential too, but the big mistake potential is there. And when Flacco came in, I knew they were going to hold on to the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know from a coordinator perspective, I would love to know why the Steelers play action sucks so bad on offense. And I don't think it's a coordinator thing. But you talk about those checkdowns, Brian, I guarantee you 90% of those plays are on play action where for some reason you're thinking you're going to get a big chunk play, whether it's over the middle to a tight end or Pickens deep. It's never there. It's never executed, and they end up just checking it down. Those are not designed for that. That's just like the escape valve. Like only use this if you have to. I don't know why their play action sucks so bad, but it does. So, okay, let's go to the defensive side. This super chat will kind of lead us into that. Kyle Smith gives us $5. Says, I saw a lot of people saying Herbig is greater than Highsmith. Meanwhile, Herbig did nothing and they ran toward his side all day. People are quick to put down our own players. I think you're right. People are quick to put down the Steelers players. Herbig, though, did have a sack, I believe, didn't he, in this game?
Yes.
And he got hurt. So like he was out for kind of part of the game. But
Yes.
The bigger thing is that the difference between Highsmith and Herbig is probably a good 25, 30 pounds. So like when you have Highsmith who can set the edge and you don't have that with Herbig, that was why they ran to his side all game long. They realized, like I've been saying it, Steichen called a great game plan. He played towards the Steelers' weakness. There was nothing the Steelers were going to do. They just played a great game.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Let's start with the pass defense. The Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson, he starts the game, goes 3 for 4 for 71 yards, has the big strike to Michael Pittman on the first play of the game, goes right at Joey Porter Jr., and then gets hurt, and he leaves the game. And so Joe Flacco comes in, 16 of 26, 168 yards, 6.5 average, did throw 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 2 times for 14 yards, had a 105.9 rating. I mentioned those sacks. They credit Larry Ogunjobi and Beanie Bishop with a half sack and Cam Hayward with another. So Nick Herbig did not get credited with a sack. My apologies. So the pass, I mean, when you think about it, pass defenses, the Steelers had 3. Keanu Benton with 1, Dante Jackson with 1, and Joey Porter Jr. with 1, which most would say should have been maybe an interception in the end zone. I don't know. What did you think about the pass defense / pass rush? Brian, go ahead.
Really, when there's no pass rush and they didn't want to call a lot of pass rushes, Mike Tomlin said this in the post-game press conference, didn't want to call a little too much because Flacco would gash them. but he was gashing them anyways. I thought some things calmed down a little bit towards the fourth quarter, and in the fourth quarter they were getting some stops there, but I didn't think it was a very good effort with the players on defense all over. I just thought it was a very poor performance from that defense total. Yes, Joey Porter should have intercepted that ball in the end zone. But again, that's why he's not a wide receiver. He has no hands. So at 6'2" with what he can do, he'd be an amazing wide receiver if he had hands. He absolutely does not have them. And he's wearing that number 24 that Uncle Ike used to wear. Ike would have been a Hall of Famer if he had hands, because he was that good of a cover guy. Yeah, they kept on giving the Colts some chances. There were some plays there that some penalties that extended things. I just didn't like the effort overall on defense. If you ask me to sum this game up, I'll probably do it in my final thoughts. Defense blew today.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Corey,
No,
anything to add?
Ditto. No, I mean, yeah, the defense wasn't able to gain any traction today. They weren't able to get off the field. They were giving up gash plays all day long. The offense was playing from behind early because the Colts were able to jump out. And, the credit to the Colts. They used the exact game plan that the Steelers should have had. It should have been the Steelers jumping out to the early lead with, Najee Harris running through the defense for touchdowns early on. And it was completely 180. It was credits to the Colts for that.
I think one of the most disappointing parts of the defense in terms of the pass rush was I was expecting with the backup center, a rookie center, first time seeing the field for the Colts, that Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi would just eat up those matchups, and they just didn't. They didn't. And so I hate to say this, but I mean, Joshua Downs was the one that kind of did the most damage against the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though he didn't lead the team in receiving. That was Michael Pittman, 6 catches for 113 yards. Joshua Downs goes 8 for 82 and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor, 3 for 20. Drew Ogletree, 1 for 15. Alec Pierce, 1 for 9. And Adonai Mitchell, no catches on 3 targets. So the Colts didn't really spread it around to a multitude of receivers. They just knew how to get them open. And it just looked like this is what you see, in my opinion, just my opinion, when the Steelers pass rush doesn't get home, this is what you see. Because this wasn't a mobile quarterback. Flacco's not that guy. And so whether they practiced all week for a mobile quarterback like Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco is a more statuesque quarterback. Think more like Kirk Cousins, but they did not get home. So let's also shift to the running game, because early in the game, the Steelers struggled to stop the run. The Steelers gave up 133 yards on 32 carries for a 4.2 yard average. Jonathan Taylor, 21 carries for 88 yards, a 4.2 average. He did have a touchdown and a long run of 21 yards. Anthony Richardson, three carries for 24 yards. Adonai Mitchell had 1 for 10 on a reverse. Trey Sermon, 5 for 8. Joe Flacco, 2 for 3. What did you think about the run defense here, guys? We'll start with you, Brian.
I thought it got better as the game went on, and I was becoming more and more comfortable with the run defense, probably the best aspect of play for the Steelers today. But they let a lot of guys get through very early in that first quarter. Even in the second, they let guys go ahead and extend drives by getting the first downs, and that happened on the run too. But I thought the run game was their best aspect.
All right, Corey.
I mean, I'd have to agree, with the way that the game unfolded. They did get better as the game went on. Obviously, they were weak up front, and that's when Jonathan Taylor did the most damage. Obviously, they didn't have to do too much in the second half, anyways. Once they built that lead, they were just trying to hang on to it at that point. But credit to the Colts. They had a great game plan. They ran the ball well.
Yeah, it was early on where the Steelers were getting gashed in every possible way, through the air, over the middle, on the ground. And again, to go back to the comparison of last year's week 4 in Houston, it was very similar. But they did find a level of equilibrium, and they were able to settle in. And in the second half, they did a much better job. And as good as Shane Steichen was, I thought he coached a really bad fourth quarter in terms of how they threw the ball on that third down and not running it and forcing the Steelers to
I would agree with
burn
you.
their final timeout. Just a really stupid decision, in my opinion. Just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But other than that, defensively, is there anything else you want to bring up, Brian?
No, I agree with you on Steichen. I don't think that the Steelers got out coached in this game. I thought they got outplayed, and the defense played so poorly that they just did not have a chance every time they try to get back into it.
Oh, I don't want to I don't want to say that the Steelers got out coached in this game. I think that the Colts were able to jump out to a lead early enough in this game that it forced the Steelers out of the game plan that they had planned for, and they just weren't able to adjust enough to come back for the win.
Corey, I wasn't talking about you.
I know.
I want to say too, I think that defensively from a schematic standpoint, this secondary is not a zone secondary. Joey Porter Jr. is not a zone cornerback.
No.
It's been well documented since his time in Penn State that he is a man-to-man, be physical, I'm going to take you out. And when they decided to throw a lot of zone concepts in the secondary is exactly when you saw Richardson was picking apart the zone too before he left the game with injury. And Joe Flacco, man, once he came in, I actually thought when Anthony Richardson left, the Steelers' likelihood of pulling off a comeback decreased.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think Anthony Richardson had all the plays. Like Flacco's been there, done that, seen it all. He's played against Pittsburgh so many times. He knows the scheme. But man, I'm definitely was shocked that they came out and did so much zone coverage when it's clearly not the MO of your best cornerback. And so I'm hoping that in the future, and so the next game, obviously with CeeDee Lamb coming to town in Pittsburgh, I really hope they put him on an island a little bit more because that's where he's going to be successful. But what do I know? I'm just a podcaster. Okay. Let's talk about some special teams here. I want to get Charles' take on Corliss Waitman. Not that he had a horrible game. He only punted the ball 3 times. He averaged 34.3 inside the 20 twice with a long of 40. What were your all takeaways on the special teams? Calvin Austin III, his best return of his career so far. So kudos to him. Brian, what was your take on special teams?
I thought special teams in this game probably for the Steelers very strong. I did not have a problem with the special teams at all. Corliss Waitman, it's really hard to judge when you're putting them down inside the 20. When you're trapping them inside the 20, but you don't have that much of an average there because it depends on the field position where you are. So I think we get a little too carried away sometimes with how far a guy kicks and what his net average is. But I thought Waitman had another decent game. I had no problem with it. A good game from when you get returns. It seems like Calvin Austin is starting to turn it on a little bit more. I think he's seeing the light. I thought this was a very good effort from CA19.
All right. Corey, anything to add?
Boswell hit his field goal. The coverage teams played well. Obviously, Calvin Austin had a great return. Corliss Waitman has been, a great replacement for Johnston, in the short term. Let's hope that continues.
Yeah. I do want to get a couple super chats up here, and I want to bring up field position in a second. Dave Dixon gives us another $10. Said, can't believe I'm doubling up on super chats, but does it surprise anyone that Flacco doesn't start for an NFL team? The dude still has it. Zone defense was weak today. We talked about the zone. Thank you for the $10. And I got to be honest, after last season and what he did in Cleveland, I am kind of surprised that there wasn't a team like at the Denver Broncos, as an example, that said, look, we're going to draft the guy, but we want someone else that can come in and play in case that guy's not ready. And no one called him. And so here he is again, old Joe Flacco, Mr. Heave and Pray, going out and finding ways to win games. Good God. All right. Tyler W gives us $2. His Colts risk the franchise quarterback to win equals desperation. I thought it was funny, not comical, but the dude goes down with a hip injury. Flacco comes in. Richardson gets back in. What do they dial up? Quarterback run. What do we do? If I'm a Colts fan, I'm like, what is going on? Were you trying to get this guy hurt? But
got to test that hip, really? I mean,
Have you all noticed that the last two games, I wanted to bring this up about field position. The last two games when the Steelers had their best field position of the game, both times have resulted in turnovers. Think back to the Chargers game.
Ooh.
It was the great stop, a shanked punt. They start at their own 45. The next throw was the interception by Bud Dupree. This game, Calvin Austin with a great return. You're set up in Colts field position. What happens? The spinorama fumble, which maybe it was down, maybe it wasn't.
Right.
Either way, you screwed the pooch on your field position. It's the second game in a row that they haven't capitalized on those type of opportunities. Bryan, anything else you want to complain about? This game sucked.
The game did suck, and they had a chance to win at the end. Yeah. And if I have to look for a silver lining, because that's what I do, I look for silver linings here. Not good enough for everybody's good. That's going to throw out the fact that they were just outcoached because Tomlin's been here 17 years. Blah 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 blah. I mean, we're gonna read that like crazy. But here's the bottom line: everything you brought up on risking your franchise quarterback. We just talked about that. I don't think this was a great game on both sides of the ball. It really wasn't. I'd be disappointed. I would be happy with a win if I was a Colts fan, but I would not be happy with the fact that they almost blew this game with a huge 17-0 start. And they did almost blow it with the way they started. It was unfortunate. But the bottom line to the whole thing, players weren't good today.
No.
Especially on defense, something that you pride yourself on. They weren't good. And you can go ahead and blame being outcoached. But the bottom line is when your players are making dumb mistakes, that's a problem.
True. Corey, anything else you want to touch on? These are our final thoughts. We'll get to that in a second. But any other aspects of the game you want to bring up?
I think I said it before. I think that Shane Steichen called a first half that caused the Steelers to have to just completely abandon the game plan that they thought that they were going to go to because they fell behind so early. And I just think that was a big difference in this game. The injuries didn't help, especially along the offensive line. We're going to have to watch that going forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to bring this up. Kyle Smith, good point here. $2 tip. He said Patrick Queen has not been a good investment so far. He is not. I got to be honest. He has not jumped out in a positive way in 4 games. Now, some will say that maybe it has something to do with he's wearing the green dot. That takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on you. I don't know, but yeah, I've seen him
when he was in Baltimore. Roquan Smith took the green dot from him, and he flourished then. Does something like that have to happen with Peyton Wilson next year?
Maybe. Go, Bryan.
The thing about Queen is right now he is not a Pro Bowler. He's not playing on a Pro Bowl level, and you throw out that kind of money, you expect it. I'd like to. I think last year with the first half of the season, a lot of people were saying the same things about a guy like a Landon Roberts. Now, look, that's kind of apples to oranges of the money that they spent on both of those guys. But with a Landon Roberts coming in, he became a second half hero. I'm hoping Patrick Queen can do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the Steelers lose 27-24. We always finish this with final thoughts. Bryan, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Man, bad game. You're going to have those bad games. You're not expecting this team to go 17-0. The one thing that drives me crazy about this game is you have a chance to win, and momentum's in your favor at the end of this game, and the ball's flying off your quarterback's face mask. I'd like to know more. I can't wait to get on the mic with Kevin Smith because he's going to tell me what happened because he's the coach, and that's why we have him here on Steel Curtain Network. I want to know more about that. I have the questions that Jeff told me to ask him as well. But when I look at this, I've got to find that silver lining. And Justin Fields brought this team back today.
Yeah.
And he did. And when things seem to be breaking down, he can go ahead and run. Now, when things are breaking down and you have to try to run, you're going to run into some trouble too with that as well. But I'm looking at this as... You brought up week 4 last year, and there was no way that Steeler team could come back and they didn't come back. They didn't even come close. They just got crushed on the scoreboard, and that was a demoralizing week 4 post-game show with Jeff, Dave, and I. It was horrible. This feels like a loss. This doesn't feel like the castle is burning down, like the foundation is cracked and everything is in ruins. It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like the fact that things need cleaned up. And when things need cleaned up, it's how well you bring out the Windex. And I think this team can do it. And I'm really excited for next week. I think going into a game against Dallas after a disappointment like this, but a comeback that was almost there, could probably tell you a lot about this team and how they respond early on in this game. And that's where we're going to find out what kind of leader not only Justin Fields is, but how much the defense can lead this team.
All right, fair enough. Corey, final thoughts.
I think that this was a huge learning experience for both Terrell Austin and Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith especially struggled at the very beginning of this game with his play calling, but as the game went on, he figured out his way. I think that this is going to do wonders for this team later on down the season when they have to start making in-game changes more quickly to make sure that this team can stay in games. I am growing more confident in Justin Fields to lead this team as the quarterback of this franchise more and more every single time I watch him play. I never thought I'd say that. Coming from Chicago, you didn't know what you were getting. You knew the talent was there, but you weren't sure what the reason was why he never put it all together in Chicago. And now that he's here and he's under this watchful eye, even though Arthur Smith didn't quite call the game plan that won today, there's a lot of confidence in this offense moving forward for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being completely honest with just the way that I feel, and this is just me and the way that I feel, kind of what Corey alluded to, I leave this game disappointed that they didn't win, but I still have a lot of positive takeaways from this performance. Defensively, not so much. Offensively, yes. I think that Justin Fields brings an element to the Steelers offense that they haven't had in a long time. And I still don't think they've really fully tapped into what he could do in terms of, and we'll call it from a fan's perspective, an excitement level.
Yeah.
I find myself really looking forward to watching games again, because I could say that the last 2 or 3 years been like, yeah, the Steelers play, I'm excited, but man, I can't wait to watch a 13-10 game. Like I do like to watch some scoring. Like 27-24 for the Steelers is not on brand the last few years. So right. I'm excited about that. I hope that the Steelers can fix some things. They have a big primetime slate coming up. You want them to play well in primetime? Well, here you go. Sunday Night Football. Then I think, is it back-to-back Sunday nights? And they have Dallas, and then they have the Raiders after that, isn't it?
No, the Raiders will be a 4 o'clock game.
Right. And then they have back-to-back Sunday night, Monday nights. Yeah.
Yes. Against the New York teams.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Make sure you stay tuned to Steel Curtain Network for all of our coverage at steelcurtainnetwork.com. I'm going to keep pumping up that website. Go check it out. Good content. I do a lot of writing there. Dave does writing. Corey has pitched in on the writing side there as well. So go check out steelcurtainnetwork.com. Also, our audio-only podcast, my Let's Ride podcast tomorrow. I'll have my winners and losers segment, as well as all my thoughts on the game. You'll check out Bryan and Coach Kevin Smith. And then you'll always catch us on YouTube every single evening, starting with the Steelers Hangover with Daniel J. and Shannon on Monday. But gentlemen, it's been a lot of fun. I wish the game ended differently. The Steelers lose 27-24. They're 3-1. We'll be back next week with another Steelers post-game show. Take it easy, everyone. We'll see you.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a